Good morning. I'm so grateful to be here this morning. It is a beautiful day, a wonderful weekend. Grateful to be here today. The talk title I chose today was Free to Be Me. And I chose that talk title because it felt that it was calling me. And thinking about 4th of July weekend, thinking about the general theme for this month is freedom. And I loved how Lindsay sang "Free to Be Yourself" in the song before the meditation and the prayer this morning with Marjorie. There's a story called The Lost Key. It's a Sufi story. And Nasruddin is looking outside his home at night, and there's a street light, and he is frantically looking for something in the ground. And his neighbor asks him, "What are you looking for?" And he says, "His house key. He can't find it." So his neighbors are looking, and they're all helping him look, and they're all trying to see if they can find this key. And finally, one of his neighbors says, "Are you sure you lost it out here?" And he said, "Well, absolutely not. I did not lose it out here. I lost it in there, in the dark house." And his neighbor said, "But why are we looking out here?" And he said, "Because there's light. It's too hard to look in there." And I love that story because I think when we're looking to who we are, we don't always look where it's hard. We don't always turn within to that place within. And what we teach here in Science of Mind is to go within. There's that one life, that one God, that one essence, that one light, and it's within. I think sometimes for myself, I look outside myself, or I am looking for something that I'm not sure what. Carl Jung has a quote that says, "Life really begins at 40. Up until then, you're just doing research." Well, I would change that to 50 because I turned 50 this year. But I do think that sometimes we do look outside ourselves. We're looking and doing what we call research, whatever that might mean for each and every one of us. And I truly feel that as we look within and maybe do some inner research instead of outer research, we might have another calling. We might find another avenue of who we are. Because truly who we are shifts and changes in every day and every moment. And yet when we give ourselves the permission to be free to express ourselves, to show up as we are. I called Sylvia last night, one of our beloved practitioners, because part of her email address is "Free to Be Me." So I was asking her if I could share something, and she had given me permission. Sylvia is the first practitioner I met here at the center, even before I became a member. And we struck up a friendship, and she's always reminded me to be who I am, to show up and be that light that I am. So when I called her about her email address, I asked permission for that. So I wanted to say thank you because that was a true gift. I was doing research and didn't realize it at the time because many years after that, I came here and this is my beloved home. I do think that there are times where on our life journey, we're figuring out who we are, and there can be things we don't understand. In a book called Led by Divine Design by Ronald Rasband, he talks about life as like a chessboard. He says it's like the divine has this chessboard of life, and we move along that chessboard, and we don't always understand why we're in a certain place. We might find out later in life or in another experience why we're moving along that chessboard, and sometimes I don't know if we ever do find out. As some of you know, my original goal in life was to become a nurse, and it wasn't my calling, and I found my calling and I love it. And at the same time, back in high school, so we're going back many decades, I had an opportunity in what's called an ROP class, or Regional Occupational Program. I don't know if they're still out there or not, but back then it was where you could take classes in the afternoon and the evening and learn a skill. And I had wanted to be a CNA. And I was encouraged not to take that class in high school, but to do something different. And later on, when I wanted to become a nurse, that CNA license probably would have been a big help, and yet I wasn't on that journey. But the class I chose to take was video production, which is the precursor to radio, TV, and film that they offer now. And I didn't understand why I signed up for that class. It was totally out of my comfort zone. I was sitting in chemistry class, minding my own business, reading in my textbook, and the kid in front of me leaned over and said, "Would you like to run TV camera for a new show I'm starting for our high school?" And I thought, "No." And he said, "Think about it. I think you'd like it." So I said yes. I went through the class, fell in love with it. And then he asked me if I'd like to have my own show. We showed our stuff on cable. So anything we worked on actually was shown on cable. Back then, Cypress had a cable channel just for the community. And I said yes. And that was a God thing. Because I did a show on religious science. I was attending the Huntington Beach Church at the time, and our assistant minister was Reverend Dr. Linda McNamara. And I decided I wanted everyone to know what we taught. I was new to our church, loving it, so I interviewed her for a show. And I was so excited. I got to take the camera out to the Huntington Beach campus and film it and edit it in the studio. I was going to have Reverend Linda interviewed, but I hadn't set up who the interview person was going to be. I forgot that part. And then my teacher said, "I guess you are." And I went, "Well, I'm usually a behind the scenes kind of person, but okay." So I had the honor and the pleasure of interviewing Dr. Linda, and I realized in that moment that that was so much fun, but it was getting out of my comfort zone. I was learning how to be me. I was learning a new part of who I was and stepping out of a comfort zone that I was very safe in. And I had the time of my life. I will never, ever forget it. And along this chessboard of life, I realized that things have happened in my world that I didn't realize were going to bring me into this higher truth. I didn't realize that the divine was having its way within, through, and as me in a way that it was. I was listening, doing my spiritual practice, honoring that truth of who I am, and yet there was a higher calling. So I'm going to invite all of us to think about, what is it that's calling forth from within you? What is it that's calling forth from within you to be free to let go of, that maybe no longer serves in this moment? Ernest Holmes says, "We are continuously living a new life, and when the old and the new do not fit nicely together, the old, the no longer able to contain the new, should be discarded." So we can let that go. And sometimes I think there's an opportunity for us to step into a greater yet to be. I learned something recently called the Joan of Complex, which I had not heard of, but it is actually a psychological term that comes forth from being afraid of success, that we're afraid of stepping into something that's greater, that would bring us forth into a new yet to be. And for each of us, that's a different definition or an experience. So I'm going to ask you to think about what it might be that's calling forth from you that you're afraid to express or experience, and let it go. For those of you who know, I love Rick Springfield. And he has a song called Free. And I was recently listening to it, and I wanted to share a few of his lyrics. He says, "So this is the cage that I built. Why I built it, I don't know. Its bars are made of anger and guilt, but there's no lock. But somehow it just wouldn't let me go. I had to close a door in my life for another one to open, so I could go through. Though I had no guiding light and no signs, somehow it still led me to you." Now, we all might have our own interpretation of what those lyrics mean, but for me, it's talking about the divine. It's the divine calling itself forth While I might not be able to see it, I can feel it, I can sense it, I feel that inner wisdom coming forth through that spiritual practice. And for all of us, that's different. It might be a meditation or prayer or talking with a practitioner or going for a run. Do you feel comfortable doing that, especially now in our time of all the changes that are unfolding and the way the world is unfolding right now? Well, we might not feel free to be who we are, but I'm going to ask us and encourage us to step into that truth and allow that freedom, the light that's within you, to express and to recognize and know that there's that higher truth that's unfolding. Ernest Holmes also says, you must maintain a close communion with your true center. Your creative power is not an act of will. It is, rather, an act of your willingness to believe. And we have to believe, we have to trust. I'm reminded of a scripture in Matthew called the Hidden Treasure. And in the Hidden Treasure, it talks about going within in consciousness, letting go of that which no longer serves, and to find within yourself that truth that can be brought forth into the outer, but it starts from within. It starts from within who we are. That's where the true value is. So I'm going to encourage us to take this opportunity and go within. And I'd like to close in prayer that I recognize and know in this very moment that I am grateful for this morning. Grateful to recognize and know the freedom of light, the freedom of truth, the freedom of who we are is the divine. It is that light, that essence, that peace, that presence, that power that I know is God. That I recognize and know it is the Christ consciousness. I recognize and know that as we step forward in life with a resounding yes, it reflects back to us that truth. I give thanks and recognize and know that as I stand for something and against nothing, I am standing in my truth. And I recognize and know in this very space the light that is expressing itself in each and every one of us. That I recognize and know the peace that is present right now, that enfolds each and every one of us, no matter where we may be on our journey in life. That I recognize and know it is that light, the love, the peace that is present, enfolding each and every one of us. Grateful for this morning, grateful for our beloved Jewel by the Sea, grateful for that chessboard of life on our life journey, and grateful to know the divine guides and directs through this chessboard of life as we listen to that still small voice. As I release my word into the law, grateful for this time, I let it be, and so it is. Thank you for being here this morning. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm very grateful.